I'm not gonna play video, but I'm just gonna listen.
So good evening, everyone. It's 5:01 p.m. on Monday, July 12th. And we're here tonight for a zoning hearing, zoning board of appeals hearing. And we only have one matter on tonight, which is unusual for lately. We've had a lot. It's just 43 Pleasant Street in Nahant. And I do see that we have the applicants here. And we also have Tony Ruzian here, the architect. So we're going to get started. I've just pressed the record button. So we are recording at this time. And what we're going to do tonight, just so everybody is aware, is we're going to speak amongst ourselves at times. And then at times we'll speak to you. We'll start with discussing a few things amongst ourselves. Then we will call the meeting to order. Once we do that, we will introduce the board members and we will read the hearing notice from the newspaper. Then we'll begin the hearing and all members of the public will have a chance to speak, whether in favor or against the application. And then we will deliberate the matter amongst ourselves and come to a decision hopefully tonight for you. Okay, so before we get started, we have our board members present. Can we please talk and review the board meeting minutes from the last meeting? I'll make sure we do that every time now. Let me just check to see when the exact date that was. I sent out board meeting minutes for, let's see, June 7th was the last meeting. Did everyone have a chance to review those? And can we get a motion to approve them?
So we had two groups though, didn't we, on that night? Is that the night that we?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So.
We don't need the same members to approve it necessarily.
Okay.
We just need the board to make a decision that we're going to approve our minutes from the prior
All right.
meeting.
I'll make a motion that we approve the meeting minutes from June 7th.
We have a second?
Second, Michael.
Second.
Oh, that's right. I'm sorry. So Peter Barber made the motion and Michael Raworth seconded it.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Roll.
Michael Raworth, aye.
Pete
Okay.
Barber, aye.
Peter Barber, aye.
Max Casper, aye.
Caitlin Kelly, aye.
And Jocelyn Campbell, aye. We have to, just so the members of the public realize, we have to verbally say, because we're on Zoom, whether we approve or not. So the meeting minutes from the last meeting are now approved and we are recording and it's now 5:04 p.m. I'm going to call this meeting to order and introduce our board members. My name is Jocelyn Campbell and I'm the chair of the zoning board. Also with us tonight is Peter Barber, and he has been a longtime member. We have Max Casper, who is a member as well. You can't see him, but we can hear him. And we have Michael Raworth and Caitlin Kelly as well, all hearing your matter tonight. And so whereas Caitlin Kelly and Michael Raworth are associate members, I'm going to appoint them for the purposes of the hearing for tonight. So I've already explained the hearing process, and now I'm going to read quickly the newspaper article that was published. So there'll be a 5 p.m. public hearing on the petition filed by Paul and Robin Waters, owners of the property at 43 Pleasant Street in Nahant, Massachusetts, seeking a special permit for the removal of an existing single-family house and construction of a new single-family house. The Inspector of Buildings has denied their request for a building permit on April 16, 2021, where the proposed new house is in violation of Section 7.03E of the Nahant zoning bylaws, where, notwithstanding any requirements of Section 7.03, no structure constituting the principal use located on a non-conforming lot, whether the structure is conforming or non-conforming, may be removed or reconstructed or removed or replaced elsewhere on such lot without a special permit. Okay. So let's begin the hearing. And if Mr. Ruzian or Mr. and Mrs. Waters, whoever is going to be speaking, if you could present your matter.
Sure. Hi, this is Tony Rosine. I'm the architect for the project. Just as you read, currently the lot is non-conforming in the R1 district, just undersized. There is an existing house that's pretty dated and in pretty bad shape. So Mr. and Mrs. Waters would like to remove that existing house and build a new home that in all intents and purposes is conforming to the zoning from setbacks and lot coverage, height, et cetera. It's just on a non-conforming lot. So we're seeking a special permit to build a new home.
Okay.
The nonconformity of the lot is as to the size, I gather?
That's correct.
Right.
So this is the one part of, what is one, there's actually a couple, but there's only a few spots in Nahant where the lot size is required to be 30,000 square feet, correct? 30,000.
Correct. Instead of 10, and this is a 12,456 square foot lot.
Okay. So does anyone have any questions for the applicant or the architect? I do, if no one else does, I get started. So, Tony, I looked at the plans, I actually went by the property, and I couldn't really determine what the floor area ratio was going to be for the new property.
Somehow I knew you were going to ask me that. It's very low. The proposed house is about 2,800 square feet versus the 2,100 that's there now.
Okay,
So
that's what I couldn't figure out was the total square footage, so I didn't know myself.
yeah, I suppose it's not listed on Wayne's chart because it's, it's not in violation of the floor area ratio, but off the top of my head, it's not substantially larger than what's there now.
Okay, I did get 17% for the current premises. So if if we allow 45%, it's gonna be, I'm sure it's in between there, because it's only 28, you said 2,800 square feet.
If I
And then I also
recall,
had a question
yeah,
about
go
the
ahead.
height. The height
Yeah,
of the property.
It's on,
I saw the plan, it said 33 feet.
yeah, 35-foot allowable in this zone.
So is that another area of relief that you're looking for in addition to the lot size?
No, we're not, the 33 feet, we're at actually 31 feet from grade.
Oh, you are, and in this 30,000 square foot lot area, you're allowed to
allows-
go 35 feet in that district.
Correct.
The way you get from 2,100 existing square feet to 2,800 existing square feet is by enlarging what, the second floor?
It's got a slightly larger footprint because we're putting in a garage, which does add a little bit on the second floor as well.
Right.
And the number
So
of
it did-
stories gonna stay the same, 2.5 stories? Sorry, Peter.
What's that? I'm sorry, what was that?
Staying at 2.5 stories in height?
It's more or less two. There's a very low pitched attic that I don't think there's hardly any square footage, the countable square footage up there. And the basement's totally below grade.
So the existing house had no non-conformities other than it doesn't, the lot size. And the new house has no non-conformities other than the lot size.
Correct.
Okay.
Anyone else have any questions?
I have a question, Janet Dolan.
Okay, wait
does
a minute, can you hold on for a second? And
Sure.
I'm asking the board right now, so just one more minute, okay?
Oh, sorry.
Let's make sure they're all done with their questions first, then we'll get into the public comment.
Okay.
Sorry, I just had one. I went by the site recently and it looked to me like there had been some clearing. Have you guys already started clearing on this site by any chance, or was it already cleared when you purchased it? Or,
You talking about the trees that were down, Caitlin?
yeah,
I saw that too.
Dakota Tree came and took some trees down. Yeah. We
There
paid.
were there were quite a few trees that were in really bad shape, which were taken down at some point over the winter. They would have come down regardless because they were dead and decaying, especially on the front areas. And then I would suppose I'd let the water speak to the sort of the rear property line and what was discussed there. And but
Yeah. Yeah, Jim, that's the Dolan's property back there, and he cleared some of that himself. But
All right.
yeah, the trees we did take some trees down.
Great, thank you.
Do any of the members of the board have any more questions for the architect or for the owners?
I'm good.
I'm good too.
All set.
Okay, so at this point in time, I'm going to ask if any of the members of the public who are present would like to speak in favor of the petition. And since no one has replied, is anyone present who would like to speak in opposition of the petition?
Yes, I would. This is James
Your name,
Dolan.
sir?
Yeah, James Dolan. This is
Your address?
James, 45 Pleasant Street,
35 Pleasant.
correct.
Okay.
Now, well, while we have opposition to it, we also have a proposal. This is James J. Dolan and Janet E. Dolan for 45 Pleasant Street, Nahant, Mass. With regard to the meeting 856-1127-7272. Passcode 92310, Zoom meeting. James J. Dolan and Janet E. Dolan would like to submit our opposition to a special permit. However, if the 5 town trees, those are town trees, that border 43 Pleasant are replaced with 5 comparably sized town trees, we would withdraw our opposition.
Okay, 1 second, please. I'm getting a cool red Nahant thing on my phone. So Mr. Nolan, your
Nolan.
opposition is in regard to there were 5 trees removed. Is that what you're saying?
5 or 6.
5, yes. There may have been 6, but roughly 5.
Trees.
Okay,
5.
Which ones are those, Jim? Are those the ones right on the road? Right
Yep.
next?
Yes.
But believe me, if those were town trees, we would have had the town pay for them. Those were our trees.
Well, I'm not so sure they are. I'm not sure that's true.
Well, we had the tree warden come over and tell us they were our trees. We're responsible for them.
Well, they're on the property line. They're on the road.
Yeah, I mean, the intention is to plant new trees. That's our intention. We're not gonna,
Okay.
we're gonna
Well-
plant some ornamental trees. I mean, not gonna.
Well, again, I'm not sure what the tree warden said to you. However, I asked the tree warden to come down. He never showed up.
Yeah. Didn't you?
So
Yeah.
I don't know that he's either right or wrong. However,
Nolan, can I ask you, how long have you lived there at 49?
45.
45.
45, I'm sorry, 45.
30 years.
Oh, it's a beautiful spot you have. I drove over there and I didn't want to, it was so nice over there. It's really
Thank
pretty.
you.
and
So,
until those trees came down, it was always beautiful there.
Those were dead
so,
trees.
you know,
too.
I can tell you that when I owned my house, my last house, the town planted trees in my yard. It was part of the development that I was in. But I think what you're talking about is something different. You think that perhaps they were on the actual line of the lot in the town land.
Yeah, but
So-
I had a tree in my front yard that was on, it was literally, the sidewalk is damaged because it was, half in the sidewalk and half on my property. And it got struck by lightning a couple of times and I got tired of having large limbs fall on my car. And when I talked to the tree warden, he said to me that, this is your tree to deal with, even though it's partially on the town line. town property. This is, yours to deal with. So,
Okay.
Yeah,
May I
Yes, go ahead, Mr.
respond to
Dolan.
that?
Go ahead.
It's,
Uh,
just for the record, it's Dolan, D is in
Dolan,
David.
Mr. Dolan. I'm sorry, Dolan. I'm sorry.
um,
I with the Zoom to hear exactly.
the research I did was such that they are in fact town trees. And considerable process of doing work on that. There are few, if any, other town trees in Nahant of that substance and size and circular circumference. But we may have a solution to this. I don't want those trees to, if we're gonna go and put 5 trees back in that are comparable in size, we would drop our opposition.
Yeah, that's our intention. Our intention is to plant some nice trees there. We haven't decided which variety yet. We plan on a maple tree. We picked out actually a few trees already that are going to be similar in size. It's just going to take a little time to grow to that height, of course, but yeah, we're going to have
When you
it.
say, would you presume the size of the trees, the circumference of the trees would be comparable?
In time, of course, those trees were probably, 70 years old.
Yeah.
So it'll take time, but our intention is to get Tony, we planned on, using a landscape architect to come in and give us a plan and plant some, it's going to look great.
For sure. A little tricky for me because as the architect, but those trees were looked at by Dakota Tree Service and assessed, and there was nothing living on those trees. So,
But they were green trees. They bloomed every year. They were always green.
I don't want to argue that. I just know from let me rephrase and say from my experience of having gone over there during the summer last year, there was nothing blooming on those trees last summer, and I've been over there. I walk this area, but specifically working with the waters last summer and before last summer, the entire time that I would go to the site, there was nothing blooming, and they were assessed as unhealthy. And so, and I'm not trying to argue. I'm just speaking into what I knew about it. I didn't make the decision to take them down. I wasn't involved with that, but they're substantially large diameter trees, and not something that could be specifically replaced today. You can't do it. I had the town take down a tree adjacent to my property that was beautiful, and it wasn't it's just not possible to replace a tree like that. Had it been healthy, I would say this is a different story, but they were unhealthy and in danger of coming down on the house if left there. And
we were Janet, we really wanted to get some light in there too. Those trees were too big for that spot. There was no light coming into the space there. So it was just we really needed some light in the area. And like I said, we're gonna replant trees there. It's gonna look great. You're gonna love it. It's gonna bring value to your neighborhood, and
and I agree with that. My only comment would be that what could go in there, what will go in there is going to be better than what was there, because they will be healthy, and more in keeping with what should be there, because those were overgrown and unhealthy trees.
I have a question. The plans that were submitted to the town, the architectural plans, do they have in the plan the planting of new trees along the Pleasant Street side?
I haven't seen that, Mrs. Dolan.
No, they're not on the plans.
Yeah, that's
because we don't require an architectural plan. Yeah, we don't require a landscaping plan. For our perspective, for zoning only, we're just looking at the structure, the size, the frontage, things like that. But if we have the waters telling us that they are going to plant trees, along that line, along that lot line, where the prior trees were, which is the front of the house. I don't see why we can't make that a condition
Yeah.
of the special permit.
Oh, yeah. Obviously, we're not gonna have an empty lot. Yeah, we're gonna have it professionally landscaped and it's gonna look really good. So. I just planted a nice birch tree here in my yard and a pear tree last year, so I like planting new trees.
The question is how to word the condition so as to satisfy everybody.
Right, we can put a condition in that no less than 5 trees be planted.
Sure. That's fine.
I guess having lived with those trees when before somebody cut them down. Is not an insignificant size tree.
They were big trees.
Yeah.
Maybe like, you're asking for like a mature, right? A mature tree to be
Yeah,
planted.
but
So if somebody said, this is a substantial size tree and we can have it in there of considerable size, I'd probably be willing to acquiesce to that. But we're disappointed that the trees will come down. We were never notified of it. And we say it's has these problems. Maybe it did, and maybe we never saw it. We didn't, we know it. However, we do have particular great pictures of many times walking down the street with those very large trees in place with blooms on them.
Understood. So to replace the tree with that magnitude, that width, I know from just past experience, you can't do it exactly quite like that. They could get as big as possible, but even if they brought a crane in, and were able to find a tree that they could dig with the roots, I'm not sure that could be done that big, but they're gonna have to start with a small tree.
Size.
And it will
I don't
grow.
know.
It's also cost prohibitive. I mean, I've seen this a few times with different projects, different clients, even my own home where the town actually cut down a tree they weren't supposed to. This happened about 15 years ago. It was a 50 to 70 foot tree adjacent to my property. And it was actually illegally cut down by the town. And we tried to get something back. And I had a landscape architect tell me that a tree of that nature, which isn't this, it would be anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 just to purchase the tree at that kind of maturity.
Wow.
And to transport it, even if they had the machines, and it would take a full trailer and a large spade, and you're talking about, it's substantial. And with it, I understand, believe me, I understand the sentimentality. I had it happen to me in my home, but it was a healthy tree versus an unhealthy tree. And I understand change is difficult with something that you have a beautiful spot, and coming down that street was beautiful. But, I'm not sure how, if we weren't applying for a special permit, and these trees were on their property, they would have the right to take them down because they're unhealthy and they're threatening. They were to have a limb come down, and there were quite a few limbs around this property that had come down, including behind them, of substantial size that were coming down. And so those things need to be dealt with to preserve, the property. And even though we're taking this house down, if we weren't here tonight, they would have the right to take those trees down if they were unhealthy. Even if they weren't unhealthy, if they're on their property, they can do that, and they went through the steps of making sure that they were their trees and they were their responsibility, and they removed them by right. And so I'm not sure, we can say, hey, we're going to do it nice. It's going to be pretty. There's going to be healthy trees there that are going to make that neighborhood and that street beautiful by the time this is done. But I think we have to be careful about committing to something we actually can't achieve.
As Mr. Raworth said, how do we word the um, uh,
Replacement.
yeah, thank you, the replacement, so that it is in the record.
Well, here's what we can do.
The special
If Mr.
permit,
If the Waters have agreed that they will plant at least 5 trees on the property, you know, we all understand based upon the explanations and everything that they're not going to be the same size as they were. They're going to be small trees, but they're going to grow, and they're going to have a landscape architect they testified to that will pick a nice trees. Not, no one wants to build a beautiful home and have it be surrounded by bad trees. So they're going to do the best they can to make it beautiful. But we can certainly add some language to the special permit if we, in fact, have a vote, if we decide to have a vote that allows it. That's a condition. That's a condition.
Jocelyn, can I ask a question for Tony?
Sure.
Tony, what's a size tree that is like reasonable to put in when you're, you know, replanting? I know I'm not expecting a 100-year-old tree to be replanted. That's absurd, right? But like, is a 6-inch caliper a reasonable type tree to put in along and let it grow? Or like, can we have some language to kind of give some direction?
That's a good question, Max. I very well could stick my foot in my mouth with saying that that's okay, because depending on the species of tree, I don't know what 6-inch caliper, not being a landscape architect, I don't know what 6-inch caliper would mean for different species. I know I planted some different ones, and you know, a tree that's 10 feet tall is fairly mature, takes a long time to get it, you know, depending on the species. Some grow fast, some grow a little slower. And you know, you could be talking about anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 for trees, for 5 trees, depending on. That's why I say we have to be careful about the language we put here, because they could, you know, putting a requirement on them to do this when they took these trees down by right.
Right.
Help me understand, when you
what I'm
say the
saying-
trees came down by right, what's that mean? How do you say that?
There are
Maybe
trees.
I could explain that maybe for you. And that what Mr. Rosian is saying is that even if if the applicants didn't need a special permit, they could have taken down the trees. Because they
How?
own,
Why would they be permitted to do that?
because they were their trees.
How did they define their trees?
They had the tree warden come down and tell
Well,
them
the tree
whether or not they
warden
were their trees.
I've spoken to the tree warden before.
You,
He's never come here to respond to me.
Mr. Waters,
asked
didn't you
them.
testify that, excuse me, Mr. Dolan, Mr. Waters, didn't you testify that the tree warden came down and told you they were your trees?
we were responsible for tending to them, pruning them wherever. They were our trees. That's correct.
He may have said that.
Well, if you look at our property line goes up to the street. Those trees are our trees. They're on our property.
Well,
I would have loved to have the town. I wish there were town trees, then we wouldn't have had to pay the $10,000 to have them taken down.
mhm. And this, who was the person who said they were town trees?
Do you remember?
No one.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Do you remember who his name was?
I thought you did, Mr. Dolan, but
No,
we
I'm contending they weren't town trees.
okay. We all
We thought
agree.
you were,
Or they were.
No,
You're
you're
contending
contending they
where?
were town trees.
I'm not. I'm contending they were not town trees.
Oh, then
I'm sorry, that they were town trees, yes. Yes, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Okay, we get it. So the best we can do, Mr. Dolan, is to say, we can try to help, and the Waters have graciously agreed that they would be willing to abide by that. If we can put it in our decision, it's a condition that they plant at least 5 trees on the property. We can't guarantee the size. It's gonna be up to them and their landscape architect, but they're telling you they're going to do their best and make it as nice as they can. And that is really all we can do tonight. And hope that that's sufficient and that everybody's in agreement. And it's a valid thing that you raised. I mean, nobody wants to come and find their view or their trees gone, and it's a bad thing. So I totally get it. Did anybody want to add? There was another person who came online while we were talking. Is there any other person present who would like to speak? They're in favor or against the application? Hi, sir. How are you? I keep seeing his picture, but he's gone. Okay. All right. Do any of the members of the board have any further questions for any of the people who are here tonight?
May I make a request?
Mr. Dolan, sure.
There's somebody on the board here who said they came down and they determined that they were unwell trees and it was acceptable to remove them.
I may just point out that was not somebody on the board. That was Tony Ruzian, who is the water's architect, who spoke on their behalf.
And that was relayed from a tree, more of what I would call a tree specialist. I didn't make that determination. I just observed that there was nothing blooming throughout the year last year while I was there. But the final determination was not made by me. It was made by somebody who's a tree specialist.
And who was that?
The Dakota Tree Service, Mark Lane.
People that took them down.
This is
Same people that took trees down.
really Mark and Karen for Rico Social. Karen,
It was the
Were they
Dakota.
right?
she was the strongest one out of all the for Rico
Hey,
Solutions.
excuse me for a moment. Sir, there's somebody on the iPhone. Could you mute yourself, please? We're hearing your conversation. Yeah, sir. Yes,
There you
thank
go.
you very much.
There you go.
Okay.
Um,
So did that answer your question, Mr. Dolan?
Hopefully.
Is this going to be on the record of the zoning board of appeals? This, well, it's more than a request. It's like somewhat of a condition that the waters have agreed to, but how do we have a record that, yes, this is on the record, this is what they're going to do?
Okay, I'll tell you a couple ways. One of them
Sure.
is, first of all, this is videotaped.
Mhm.
This is going to be posted on the town website as soon as we get off this call.
Mhm.
That's one. Number two, in our special permit decision, we're going to make a note of it. So you'll see it in writing as well.
Well, first of all, thank you very much. However, Dakota Tree were the people who came down and said, these are diseased. These are diseased and should be removed. Well, that's a conflict of interest.
We're not here
They're the
to-
people who want to cut the tree down because they make a buck out of it.
Well,
And
that's-
maybe they made the right
I think we're getting
assessment,
too
maybe
far
they
down
didn't.
the discussion of these trees. I mean, we're not here to decide whose trees they were or to decide whether they were sick or not. That's not our jurisdiction. Now, we're at the point where we're gonna bake into a decision that they're gonna plant new trees. I mean, what more can you ask of us as a zoning board than to address the trees reasonably in the decision? Anything beyond that is in excess of our role as the zoning board. This is not the time to decide exactly what happened with the old trees, frankly.
right.
Well, the other factor,
I guess,
the other factor is that the old trees are gone and nobody can do anything about that. So if they're, to the extent that that the neighbors at the Dolans have some complaint about that is not something that's within our jurisdiction. The act of having taken down the old trees, whether they were healthy or not, it is, if you will, it's a matter of sort of an effort at mediating this proposed opposition, that we deal with the possibility of putting in, if you will, trees in replacement. But as was pointed out, that's not really our jurisdiction. We're just trying to find a peaceful way to resolve this. And, we'll see what we can do that with wording in that will be helpful. But assuming that is, let's assume that we couldn't come up with wording that was satisfactory to the Dolans and that they maintained their objection. So then we would have to vote on whether or not the special permit can be granted in the light of that objection. And
But the
I think-
object,
Yeah.
yeah, the objection isn't to the actual building of the house. It has nothing to do with the house. It has
Right.
it has to do with the fact that there were some trees cut down.
Which is, if you will, a coincidence in time. It doesn't really affect the demolition and the new construction.
Correct.
So essentially, Mr. and Mrs. Dolan, we've heard your complaint and your neighbors have heard the complaint and they've offered graciously to say, you know, we will plant 5 more trees. We're happy to do so. That's the best that they can do. If you have any further, you know, inquiry about it, I suggest you could take it up with the town. I'm not sure where or how, but it's not really, again, Max Casper pointed out, we can't do any more for you than that. And even that, I think, is pushing it because it's not really part of our job to do that.
Well, let me back you up for a second. What you're telling me is somebody who comes in, whose business is to take the trees down, was the decider to take down what I call town trees because of their size and the fact they're out to the beyond the reach of the property and onto the street.
Well, I think that there was input received from the tree service, and vis-a-vis the conflict of interest, I understand your point. But the same thing you could say to your heart surgeon. Your heart surgeon says, I need to do an operation to fix your heart. You don't accuse him of conflict of interest, except that he's the guy who's getting the fee for the service. So that's a valid point to be considered, but I would suggest that it's not as determinative. Even if there had been no tree service individual come out and provide the opinion that the trees were dangerous, on the assumption that we are correct that they were on the applicant's property, they would have had the right to take the trees down just because for aesthetic reasons, just because they didn't like them. So we understand your concern that they were town trees. And to the extent that you were correct about that, it may be that there's something you could do with the help of the town to get some remedy about them having been taken down. But that would be the same as if they'd been done a year ago independently of this application. It just seems to be, it's a coincidence that the trees come down, you are concerned, and we have this application now, but we have to make sure that the one does not improperly influence the other. You're obviously free to go to the town and say, come along and rule that these were town trees, and then whatever remedy there may be against the applicants, fair enough. That may be the case. I don't know. I have no idea. But if that's so, it is. And if it isn't, it isn't. But it doesn't affect what the ZBA has the power to do.
I've heard what you said. I don't agree with it.
Okay. Well, thank you. We really appreciate what you did have to say, and we tried to address it. So we're going to move on. And so right now, what's going to happen is the board's going to speak to themselves, each other, and we're going to make a decision about this matter. Okay. All right. So Peter, Max, Caitlin, Michael, what do you guys think?
Well, to Mike,
Oh, sorry.
go ahead, Caitlin.
I was gonna say, I honestly asked about the trees to begin with because I was concerned that if there was a special permit necessary, that they were being cleared before getting the special permit. But when I heard that the town warden came out and had already assessed the trees and determined that that was on their property, they could clear it, my concerns were allayed. So just to put that out there, that's why I asked the question about the trees to begin with.
Okay. And how does everyone feel about the special permit?
I mean, to my questioning before, the existing dwelling, other than the size of the lot, had no nonconformities. Thank you, Michael. Had no nonconformities, and the new house has no nonconformities. I mean, if they were coming in front of us and we want to put the house on the front of the lot and we had to look at, front setback or side setback. I mean, they're essentially taking down an older piece of property or an older dwelling and putting up a new dwelling. I don't think
It's a
there's
tiny bit bigger, but it doesn't seem to be much bigger. So I mean,
yeah, yeah, but it's still not infringing on any other setbacks or any other, floor area ratio or any of that. It's, I mean,
And the applicants have the right to maintain the existing building. They could repair it at great expense, and none of that
Right.
would implicate our authority or would implicate any. I mean, they'd have to get a building permit for what they do, but repairs are not going to be ruled out by Wayne. So it's a question of, do you have a newer value enhanced structure, or the older structure which may need to be repaired? And it seems to me that neither of those, well, that the new structure creates any downside to neighbors, and we have not been presented with any objections to the new structure as such.
right. And Max, you're more the expert on this, but it's an existing nonconformity, and they're not increasing that nonconformity. So, I mean, that to me doesn't seem like it's an issue.
No, I think they do need a special permit because
Right.
it's a total reconstruction on an undersized lot.
Right.
So I think it's proper to be here, but nothing really jumps out at me as problematic or detrimental to the neighborhood on the proposed plan. So
Right.
anyone want to
Ron.
move for a finding then as to the criteria?
I'll move
Sure.
Go ahead, Peter.
You go ahead, Michael. You were first.
We stepped on each other. So I would move that the board find that the proposed action on the lot is not substantially more detrimental than the existing situation.
And I'll second that.
Peter Barber?
Yep.
Any discussion on the motion? All in favor of the finding of that motion?
Peter Barber says aye.
Mike
Caitlin
Raworth,
Kelly.
aye.
Caitlin Kelly says aye.
Max Casper, aye.
And Jocelyn Campbell, aye. Okay, so we've made a finding that the alteration or extension is not going to be more detrimental to the existing nonconformity of the neighborhood, to the neighborhood. Yeah, do you think we have sufficient information to bring the motion?
So I'll make a motion that we grant a special permit so that the structure be built per plans presented, and that no less than 5 trees be planted on the property to replace trees that were removed.
Thank you.
Second,
And it was seconded by Michael Raworth.
right.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Peter Barber says aye.
Mike Raworth, aye.
Kelly, aye.
Max Casper, aye.
And Jocelyn Campbell, aye. Okay, so Mr. and Mrs. Waters, we just granted you a special permit for the construction. And at this point in time, all we're gonna do is we're gonna write up the decision. We're getting faster at it now. We used to take 2 weeks or so, but now we're getting faster. We'll probably have that within the week. We'll file it with the clerk, and then there's a 20-day appeal period after that. And after that, you're free to do as you please. Okay? So anybody who does want to appeal this matter, they would have to appeal within that 20-day period. All right, so I have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
I'll
Michael
second it.
Raworth.
Second by
Peter
Peter.
Barber.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute, before everybody goes, what about the dates? Not all the just the members. We have to talk about dates for our
Oh.
next hearing. So bye, Mr. and Mrs. Dolan. Thank you.
Thank
for
you.
coming.
Thank
Bye
you.
now.
Walkers and
Thank
Tony, let's see you. Take care.
Thank you.
Can I just solidify the dates for the next hearing? I know, Peter, you're gonna be sailing in the Caribbean or something, right?
No, Europe,
Yeah.
Europe, okay, Europe.
going from Ireland to Germany.
Wow.
Wow, that sounds amazing.
I might run into you. I want to be over there myself.
Oh, yeah, where you gonna be?
Well, I think it's the first week of September. I'm going to be in. You might be back by then. I think we're
Oh, I'm
leaving
gonna be back, yeah.
the very
Then
end
you
of
could get there from
going
there.
to Scotland. Scotland. Anyway,
So we're supposed to sail Scotland, but because of the Indian variants, there may be difficulty getting into Scotland.
Oh.
So you may want to check on that. By then it may have be more open. I think it's opening up now.
that's
But
what I heard. Yeah,
we had to change our plans.
I'm staying away from the planning of the trip. My friend, my good friend is doing it. My friend Debbie, she and her husband were close friends with my late husband, and they invited me and my new husband to go. They like
nice.
Bill, so they invited us to go with them on this trip.
Awesome.
And I don't like to fly, so I don't really want to talk about it too much. It's making me worried thinking about it. But anyway, let's talk about availability. So far, August 9th seems the best day for everyone. I've got no to Peter, but a yes to Max and yes to me on that day. Michael and Caitlin, are you available on August 9th?
I'm clear.
Checking. Sorry.
Michael, you said yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I am also available.
You are, okay.
Yep.
So 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have to check with David Walsh, and if he's available, then we can do August 9th. Because right now we're short a member because of David McCool resigning, although he said he would help us if we were in dire straits. So we only have 6 members now. So if we lose one, then we're in trouble. And like on August 2nd, we have 2 people who can't do it. And on August 16th, we have 2 people who can't do it. So August 9th looks the best so far. I'll check with David and confirm.
Any thoughts on getting another appointment?
You know, Tony had another person. So I'll reach out to him.
Okay.
I'll send him an email.
Hey, and I don't know if I can even bring this up, but the letter that was attached to your reminder today from the planning board.
Oh, I know. I'm sorry.
So
sorry to send you so much stuff.
Yeah, no, but can I ask the question, is this overreaching for the planning board?
You know, they're entitled to give their comments and their opinion. We can either take it or we cannot take it. You know, it just so happens in regard to that application, I did ask him to ask the applicants already to give us updated plans because the plans really weren't sufficient.
Right. And I totally get that, but when he goes into the second part of it, where if people bring in additional information to a hearing, they're asking to have, like extended for 14 days so that they can look at it. And I don't know. I think that's overreaching. I think that's, I don't know that, I mean, like you said, we can take their recommendation or we could not take their recommendation. So the fact that we have additional information on the meeting night, to me, doesn't make a bit of difference other than it may change their mind one way or the other. But
just so you know, this question was posed to me previously. And what I said in response was, and I don't know if you were around at that time, but what I said in response was, when we get some new information on the night of a hearing, what we typically do is, if it changes the application substantially, obviously we'll reject it and we'll say you have to reply or get a continuance or something. But if it doesn't change it substantially, then what are we going to do? We're going to have to make a decision on our own of whether or not to accept the item.
I think it's like the boy who cried wolf. Like if the planning board would like give us a letter every once in a while that had a really important thing on it, I'd really value it. But it's like they're sending us these crazy letters all the time. And it's like, I don't even want to read them, to tell you the truth. So if they really want to control what's going on in the zoning board so much, maybe some of them should quit the planning board and join the zoning board,
Well, no, they should re-examine the zoning bylaws and make it tighter or whatever. They like, again, special permit, not substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. I have yet to get a really clear-cut definition of what is and what isn't substantially detrimental to the neighborhood. And maybe if the planning board put a good definition, our lives would be a lot easier.
But that's what the definition is by law. So we are stuck with that, but we can interpret it. And I think we try very hard.
Right. Oh, no, I think we do a great job. I kind of agree with Max that we get a letter for every time something comes in front of us. And that's why I feel like it's overreaching. It's our job as the zoning board of appeals. Yes, the planning board is the one that they don't even write zoning bylaws. They recommend them.
Well, we
The
can also
town-
write them too, you know. We
Oh,
can
no,
write them
I
down.
know. Well, anybody can. I
Right.
wrote a bylaw for the animals that
Mhm.
was passed the town meeting. So anybody can write the bylaw. The way it was described to me is if you're writing a zoning bylaw, you really want to have the buy-in of your planning board.
Of course.
They don't write them, they don't, but they're a very helpful step in getting them approved. And I know Dan Berman and I like Dan. I just think that this is a little bit overreaching where we would delay somebody for 14 days for some supplementary submission that may or may not have any
Well,
huge.
We wouldn't do that, Peter. I don't think we would
Yeah.
do that unless there was a change to the application.
Right.
Yeah, but
And then we would do it.
the submissions, obviously, the whole application includes the submissions. And if there's late submissions, it's a judgment call as to whether it's substantial enough
Right.
to warrant new input from the planning board. I haven't looked at the provisions that deal with the planning board's input. And it strikes me that Dan Berman is simply being more energetic than past chairs of the planning board
You're
have
right.
been.
You're
And-
right.
It may be, if you will, a little bit annoying, but on the other hand, we don't have to
Right.
take that much cognizance of it. It's a
We
recommendation.
won't with it.
Right.
It
But we'll be
strikes,
respectful.
yeah, but it also strikes me that it does make sense to call upon applicants, if you will, to fish or cut bait, if they want something to be considered by the deciding authority, which is us with the input of the planning board, that they have a cutoff date by which they've got to have a complete package so it can be, evaluated by both players. I mean, the danger is that somebody comes up with something that doesn't seem that significant to us. We don't, get our teeth into it. And the planning board, when they find out about it, tells us, oh, wow, that makes a lot of difference. And we thought of something that, you guys overlooked. I
But
think
it's
that's,
our judgment call, Michael. It's
I
our
understand
judgment.
it. I understand
Yeah.
it is, but our judgments can be questioned even though we have the power to make them.
They
So
can
I'm
always
just-
question our judgment.
Use tonight's hearing as an example. What if the Dolans had spoken to
Tree surgeon.
not just a tree surgeon, but no, if they had spoken to their neighbors ahead of time and said, hey, listen, you cut down those beautiful trees, and the neighbors said, well, we're going to add trees, and they brought a supplemental sheet that they gave to us that said we're going to plant 5 trees here, and here. Do we need to send that back to the planning board? I don't believe so. I think it just helps us to get through it like we did tonight.
If this substantial change is what we've always done, we withdraw it, we tell them to withdraw, or we continue the matter. If it's not a substantial change, then we go forward. We have to make that judgment call because we are the ones that are appointed to do so.
So we would have the power. Let's say somebody on the last day or two before the hearing comes in with something that we consider to be substantial. We have the power to basically say, okay, we're not going to consider this at the meeting scheduled for tomorrow night
Yeah.
because you've added substantially, and we're going to postpone you so that the planning board has the power to digest this, correct?
We wouldn't postpone it for that purpose, but we would postpone it because it would be a new application generally. Let me just point out that, for example, on the Jijong matter, on the matter on Wilson Road, for example, on the night that he presented his testimony, he presented a whole new matter, a whole new thing. So we said, okay, well, you're gonna have to continue this for a substantial period of time, or you're gonna
Right.
withdraw your application. And he withdrew his application. So that seems
Right.
to be what happens. It's not one of those things that's really clear cut. I think we continue to try and do the best job that we can.
Mhm.
And if people do sometimes file things the night of the hearing, that's pretty common. We can't say no to it completely. We don't like it.
Well, I mean,
And
we
I,
could.
I've asked
we-
Kim
we-
too.
We
Like
could,
today-
we could definitely say no to it. I mean, courts have all kinds of deadlines and,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
there's some remedy if you don't comply with them. The question is
Yeah,
whether
but-
it's important enough to, you know,
Right.
to put a delay on the proceeding.
Yeah,
People,
like,
what I mean, Peter, Michael, is sometimes people will come in with a picture or something like that.
Right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
They add
You know, okay, that's
pictures
not a
and-
big deal.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
but like today, for example, I spoke to Kim in I via email in the planning department. And there is a checklist. And I said, can you please institute the checklist? So she's doing that from this point forward. So
The
make sure the
checklist,
applications are complete.
all right. So the checklist has something that will tend to discourage last minute submissions, additions.
Right. And they should have been checked all along, but I think the applications aren't always checked to see whether they're sufficient.
Yep.
But now, I did communicate with her about that today and reminded her about this, so she's gonna do it. Kim's gonna make sure that they're complete, plans are complete, so we can move forward.
You know, maybe the thing would be helped if we put some sort of a proviso in the papers that applicants receive when they're dealing with Kim, that basically says, you put yourself at risk if you submit anything at the last minute, that we may have to consider this a modification of the application and oblige you to withdraw and resubmit. So at least they're alerted that there is a potential downside to doing that, right?
I think it's in there. I think there's something in there in the bylaws, and not the bylaws, but the rules and regs and on the application about that. I'll take a look.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Pretty
that's
sure.
great. It's great if there is. It would strike me, it would, I mean, a lot of this back and forth would be potentially eliminated if we could better educate the applicant pool, and
I agree
have
100%.
perhaps put something in, maybe put the wording in bold so that they have a harder time overlooking it,
I understand completely. All right, so maybe what we could do is we could think about that. And I actually, when I was on vacation last week, I got a call from one of the people from CPTC about the training. So I got to call them back. And I'm going to tell them in the fall would be best, because that way you're back from your trip, Peter, I'm back from my trip.
Yep.
And we'll plan on, say, late September, or maybe October
Okay.
for the training.
Yep.
All right.
You sailing with the same boat, Peter?
Yeah. 44 Alden.
Where's
So
he live now?
Kiel, Germany.
Oh, he moved back to Germany.
Well, yeah, he's back and forth, but he spends more time there. And, the boat was in Ireland. It got there obviously before COVID.
Yeah.
Last summer, we were supposed to sail up over the top of Scotland to the Outer Hebrides and the Shetland Islands, and then over to Norway, which unfortunately we can't do. So we're going to bring the boat back to Germany, and with any luck, we'll be able to stop in a couple of ports in France.
So you're going to go through the English Channel this time instead of around the top.
Yep, English Channel up to the Kiel Canal.
Yeah.
So
That route around the north of England and Scotland is pretty rough. Even in
yes,
summer, you could really take a beating up there.
yes,
That's what kicked the ass of the Spanish Armada, really.
yeah, and I'm actually pretty content with doing what we're doing. The highlight, we're talking about putting in some port someplace and renting a car and doing the beaches of Normandy. So
Oh, yeah.
I've already been to the beaches, but to go back again, I do it in a heartbeat. It's such an awesome place to go. So, all righty.
Good deal.
All right, guys, we've been recorded the whole time.
Well, people are going to, is there any way to cut that short?
I'll try.
All righty.
All right.
Have a good night, everybody. Hey, we'll see you at the Wall That Heals.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Do we have a motion to adjourn? Motion to
Yes.
adjourn?
So it was made and seconded.
Second.
Made and seconded.
Yes.
Just need the
Seconded?
vote.
Okay.
Yeah.
all in favor?
I vote aye. Pete Barber.
All
Bye.
right, bye, everybody.
Aye.
Thank you.
Take care.